I gained 20 some odd pounds in 3 to 4 weeks, but I felt horrible.
And certainly, there's always a price to pay when you're messing with a pathway
Yeah.
chronically. You can't do
I
it.
had the worst experience with
Some
it
people have-
multiple times.
Some people have nausea with
Oh,
it, and
dude.
some people don't.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Dylan Gemelli podcast. So, this is a different one for me today. I am in a very famous setting, I would say, at the Soundshed Studios, thanks to my guest today who set this all up. And I'm traveling, doing a nice little run here in Austin, Texas. And I am beyond blessed, as I was just telling my friend here before. But my guest today is a close friend first and foremost. So I can give him every accolade in the world and give you an intro, but I want to make sure that I say he's my boy. And I met him through a friend of ours named Molly Eastman. And actually, it's funny because I was checking out my friend's work and she wrote me and said, I have a friend that wants to connect with you. And it was, I told my wife, I said, whoa. I said, this is the guy I had my eye on, because I don't sit around and look and reach out for people very often anymore. I did that when I got into the space, but it was just, it's God's work. So, but my friend today, listen, first and foremost, he is known as the most trusted voice in supplements. And that's why I was deferring to him beforehand and discussing everything. But I want to talk just a couple other things he's done. Biochemist, sports nutritionist. He's a clinical dietitian, and he's helped people all over the world for many, many years. Super respected, well known. I can go on and on. But anyway, my friends, Shawn Wells.
Thank you, brother. That means a lot. You're a great friend as well, and yeah, looking forward to diving in here. And glad you came out to Austin, and I'm stoked right now.
You know, I know that you made some sacrifices for me today to even be here, cutting a trip short that most people would never dream of doing. And I appreciate you. I appreciate everything. More so, I appreciate the friendships and the discussions and the talks and the voice notes and everything else. It's really nice because you have a lot of friends, but you have very few real friends. So thank you for that more than anything.
Oh, thank you, Dylan.
All right, so I've got a lot to talk to you about. I've been in the supplement industry since 2011, probably in and out. And I've seen a lot, I've done a lot, I've heard a lot, and I've been around a lot. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want to talk to you first about how you got into supplements in general, because it's a slippery slope when it comes to the whole game and how it works. And then I just want you to talk about some of the really bad things that have gone on and why you are a beacon of hope in the industry.
Yeah, well, thanks. For me, I guess I'll go all the way back. I'm 51, closing in on 52. My mom in the 70s was like kind of a pioneer with this company, Shackley. She was obsessed with supplements, had the tackle box way before anyone else I know. And there was like the whole food. It was called Vitaly multivitamin, and there was a vitamin E that she would like break open, put on my wounds if I had wounds. We had vitamin C because Linus Pauling's work was just coming out on orthomolecular dosing of vitamin C and like the benefits it might have far beyond just scurvy,
Right.
and vitamin C deficiency. But fast forward, so that was where I grew up with the belief that these tablets, capsules, soft gels had power. Um, but I did grow up with a difficult time at home, at school. There was bullying. There was a lot going on, and I became morbidly obese. I became very sick. I was going to school at a very prestigious business school, Babson, and getting my business degree because that's what I was told to do. Just go out there, make money. I didn't know what really sparked my passion at that point.
Mhm.
But I started working out. I was reading these magazines, reading these bodybuilding encyclopedias like from Arnold. There was these supplement review guides and all these things. That I was at GNC, I was at the time Barnes and Noble, or Walden Books or whatever, reading all the magazines.
Yeah.
And I was just obsessed with it. And I would spend like 3-4 hours in a GNC just reading labels. And I believed in the power of these supplements. I believed in the power of working out. I started working out, and especially when you're first working out, you're moving up like a set of dumbbells every time you go back to the gym, and it's super exciting. And at that same time of, yes, me working out, yes, protein, creatine had just dropped into the market, and it had radically changed the landscape of sports nutrition at the time. And with that came a lot of other innovation from companies like EAS. And I was just working out like crazy, taking all the supplements, seeing changes. And I went to my doctor in between my sophomore and junior year for an annual physical. And I was telling him all about like my passion on this, and just how exciting it was and all the changes. And he saw the changes in my body composition, my health, and was very happy for me. And I remember seeing these ads where there was this guy who I eventually got to meet, Dr. Marv Hoyer with Muscle Tech, and he had like these like colored bottles, and there's bodybuilders in the in the lab with him. And I was like, that's cool. I want to do that. And I was telling him all about this, and I thought he was just going to laugh at me and tell me that's stupid. And instead, he drew out a lifeline for me and told me, why not be happy between here and here? And that was the first person in my life that gave me permission to not do what's smart or what's logical, but pursue my passion.
Mhm.
I didn't have the Tony Robbins, the Oprah Winfrey, the Instagram, all the entrepreneurs. Like at that time, everyone was doing what they're told to do and working corporate. There were no entrepreneurs that I knew of for the most part. Um, And that shifted everything for me. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go back to school, even though it's going to be difficult.
Mhm.
I'm going to get like 2-3 years worth of prereqs and sciences. Then I'm going to get into my master's at a great school, and I did it at Chapel Hill.
Oh.
And and then that led to me becoming a dietitian. And then I had to work as a chief clinical dietitian in long-term care and acute care, like hospitals. But all the while, on the evenings, on holidays, on weekends, I was working at supplement shops. I was working on, at that time, different forums for different companies, doing white papers, going to the Arnold, the Olympia, doing all these kinds of things and building my cred. And eventually, after about 10 years of working clinically, I got on in industry to become the director of R&D at Dymatize,
Really?
and which is a massive company, and we helped take it to sale to Post for 425 million. And then that just set my whole career ablaze, because one, I had worked at a top one of the top, maybe like them and Optimum Nutrition were the top at the time,
Mhm.
supplement companies in sports nutrition. And I helped sell a company. I was instrumental in taking that company to sales. So now all the sports nutrition companies were coming to me, and especially supplement companies that were looking to go to sale to private equity, to strategic, were seeking me out. And then I even started working on my own ingredients in the background, like T-creen and dynamine were my first, and I've done about 40 since, and I've formulated about 1,200 products since. I've had a best-selling book since called The Energy Formula, and a course to go with it. I've been on Mind Valley with the Ultimate Guide to Supplements. I've spoken 60 countries. Like, it's been amazing, from just a fat kid with a dream at one point to where I am now. It's pretty incredible.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Dymatize was pretty damn insanely big. I mean, like you said, it was, At that time that I remember, Optimum Nutrition and Dymatize, and there were just a couple others that were like the top 4 or 5. So well known. That's amazing, man. So, are you creating ingredients yourself?
I have a team of 100 scientists that I work with in China, and a business partner in China in Nanjing. Um, and it is a pharmaceutical level, multiple facilities. We work with a number of not only elite brands, but truly like a number of pharmaceutical companies.
Mhm.
So, you may hear China, but this is like the most elite level of manufacturing and synthesis. And as I'm saying, when you have 100 scientists, like you can create a lot of things. So I'll dream things up, and literally like a week or two later, I have it in my hands,
Wow.
and that's pretty exciting. So, and we do synthesis, enzymatic, herbal extraction of a number of methods, fermentation, which I believe is the future. This bacteriologic fermentation, where you can create an ingredient cleanly by you take like yeast and you modify it genetically, and then the yeast can make this compound. And so instead of having like a starter material and solvents and all of this stuff, like normally with typical synthesis, synthetic ingredient, fermentation, it's just made. There is no like solvent. There's no like other starter products. I mean, besides like maybe glucose or something. Um, so it's a really clean process, a vegan process, a sustainable process for the environment and for your health. And fermentation's the future. So that's what we've been working heavily on, is making ingredients through fermentation. And then I've been very focused at shifting a lot of trends in the industry. Like with N&B, the company that I created ingredients with, we went to a new concept of pure, potent, precise. We're very focused on ready to drink in the industry. It's called RTD. So that's things like Update Here or Life Cider, things like that. Basically cans, bottles, etc. We're also in like ready to consume, I would say, is, things like oral pouches, gummies, sublingual strips. We're seeing the market move shots. We're seeing the market move this direction because the ready to mix powders, and then most certainly the tablets, soft gels, capsules, are just not as popular anymore, especially with Gen Z and in particular Gen Alpha. They want ready to consume. Is that more expensive? Is that more complex? Yes, because you're flavoring it. There's stability issues. How well does it dissolve into things? Like with gummies, like is it stable in heat and the moisture and sugar and whatever it is? There's more complexity to it, but younger people just want to consume whatever it is they're having and enjoy that experience rather than choking down a handful of capsules or having too much powders and all those kinds of things. So with the market shifting, our company is shifting, and we're doing pure, potent, precise. And so we are looking at no herbal extractions, no extra biomass. When something's a 1% or 5%, that means that there's 99% or 95% other stuff
Uh-huh.
than the active.
Yeah.
That's going to settle to the bottom. That's going to have what we call organoleptic, or basically taste issues. It'll have solubility issues, stability issues. We're putting that to the side. We're just doing pure compounds. Then we want potent, which means tiny doses. A lot of the things that we're working on have like 5, 10, 50 milligram doses, very small doses, not typically like multi-gram doses. And then precise is around all the technologies that we're using for delivery and enhancing stability, whether it's liposomes, microencapsulation, emulsions, like a lot of these different things that we're looking at as well. So we're pioneering, I believe, what's coming next. and we're setting the tone for that.
There's a lot of difficulty I think people don't understand, like, for instance, like, with a creatine gummy or how much you can fit in there to where it actually works, doesn't taste bad, doesn't stick, isn't chalky. I've seen it so often, and there's so many things that turn out bad. You guys are pretty precise with how you do that and how it works and like the sugar contents and all of these things. I mean, I see these everywhere and I sit there and I ask myself, why would you sell some of these things with this much crap in there? I mean, do you advise people when they come to you? Do you tell them like this, or do you say this is how it has to be? Because I'm curious because I see it and I sit there and I say, well, for people in our industry, sucralose, I mean, things like this that we speak out against, yet I see so many of them being sold in front of all of like the people that we work with. Tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I have another company called Zone Halo, and I have a team around that where we do formulations, QA, QC, packaging innovation, regulatory studies, patent filings, third party logistics, all this kinds of stuff. And we definitely do formulations like you're talking about. And typically, I'll tell you with creatine gummies in particular, you may have seen the data that Now Foods tested from Amazon as well as Supco, another new
Yeah.
company, new app. They've looked at creatine gummies, and between both of them, about 90 to 95% of the products on the market are bunk.
Yeah.
And the reason this is because creatine in particular converts to creatinine under moisture. And so this is the problem why you can't currently, we're all trying to work on this. I'm working on this. I think the industry is trying to work on this, solving creatine in ready to consume, in particular, ready to drink beverages, because as soon as you put it in moisture, it starts converting to creatinine. And therefore, it is not stable, and you won't deliver active creatine. You're delivering essentially inert creatinine. And that was the case in all the testing that's been done. Even companies that have overages, I would say the only creatine candy, if you will, that I would trust it's not a gummy. I wouldn't trust that, but something that's more like in the dry, sweet tart kind of idea. I know Muscle Tech, Iovate, they make one. I think Animal, which is a brand in sports nutrition, they make some creatine chews or sweet tarts or whatever, Smarties, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Anything with significant moisture, like a gummy or certainly a drink, it's not going to last. It's not going to test out. Further, with Amazon and the testing that was done by Now Foods, who has been a just gold standard for 30, 40 years now. Like I love Now Foods, great price. And I think they were taking a beating because they've been in retail, in particular the mom and pop shops,
Yeah.
in supplements. And they've been taking a beating, obviously, from Amazon, and in particular the Amazon choice supplements that are basically whatever is cheapest,
Yeah.
and they have manipulated reviews, and they did about 14 different single ingredients and maybe as many as 20 or 30 different products on Amazon per ingredient. So think of like astaxanthin, berberine, maybe it was like ginseng or something like this, and they tested out all these different products, and about 80% of them tested short of label claim. About 30% of them had no active at all. And this is allowed on Amazon. So be careful what you're consuming. Be careful what you're paying for just because it has a great price, just because it has great reviews. I would be very reluctant to buy it. If it's not a great company like a Thorne, a Pure Encapsulations, Nordic Naturals, Now Foods, Designs for Health, Zymogen, like some of these really great trusted names that have been around for multiple decades and have quality control departments bigger than these companies have employees. Think about that, because I've been at these companies where we had 20 plus people in quality control just doing testing.
Mhm.
These other companies that are on Amazon, some of them are making 9 figures on Amazon, have 1 or 2 employees, and they're just pumping out dust in a capsule.
Yeah.
And not only that, what I also worry about is, yeah, we're talking about the things that you want in there not being in there. But what about the things you don't want in there being in there, like heavy metals, like bacteria, like um, some foreign substances, or even banned substances? If you're, tested at your job, if you're a pro athlete, be very careful. This stuff can lead to health issues. Even like companies that don't have great quality control and their contract manufacturers where they're made, there's been cases where they were off on the vitamin D by 10 or 100 fold. And then people got very sick because there's way too much in
Yeah.
there.
Yep.
And so I will just put this out there right now. Just please stop buying 10 bad supplements and just buy one really good supplement and start from there. And that's the scientific method
Mm.
too, is to do one thing at a time, see how it works for you, and then move to the next thing.
Yeah.
So if you're going to add one thing, make sure it's the right thing
Mhm.
and from a quality company, and it's got what you want in there and doesn't have what you don't want in there. And then add another thing. But don't tell me how supplements don't work because you're using crap from Amazon that has sawdust in it and maybe some heavy metals,
Right.
because supplements absolutely do work. And there's thousands and thousands of studies showing that. And I've been behind a number of these ingredients and formulas, and I'm very proud of them. And I know people are shocked off, and I take more than 100 capsules a day, probably. I'm almost 52 and I feel very young. I think my metabolic age was on a recent test was 33 years old, so I'm doing something right.
Would you say then that on Amazon, and we're going to just talk about Amazon briefly right now, that as long as it's a company, like you said, a reputable company, you're still going to get what you're supposed to get? Or is there anything being faked around there? Like if it says sold and distributed by Amazon, or if it's coming from the said company's store, like should you even buy anything from there?
Yeah, great question. I love this question because it's very relevant.
Mhm.
So be very careful when something's third party seller on Amazon. Uh, there's a lot of counterfeiting on Amazon.
Yeah.
Some of these elite brands that I was just talking about are the ones that get knocked off in sports nutrition. It is like a company like a Muscle Tech, and in kind of wellness, it would be the Now, the Jarrow, the Life Extension. These really great brands are the ones that get knocked off. In particular, in foreign countries like India, it is about 85% of the supplements in India are counterfeit and have nothing in them. That's a whole other discussion. But on Amazon, 20 to 30% of these high quality products are also counterfeits. That's been found as well. So be very careful. When you're purchasing on Amazon, even these elite brands, make sure you're buying them from a first party seller. So if it's Now Foods, you're buying from Now Foods store on Amazon.
Mhm.
Or someone who is trusted, like if GNC or Vitamin Shop are on Amazon, or someone that's a trusted seller. I don't know who else, like Target, or someone on Amazon that is legitimate. Great. But if it's some company you've never heard of selling the Thorn or Pure Encapsulations, I would be very leery of that.
Mhm. And make sure that, and people watching, make sure you actually look, because it's very easy to just click, buy, because it says Amazon Prime. I've done it. I've made that mistake before and caught it and was like, uh-oh, cancel. because it will say right on there, sold and shipped by Amazon, and you can see if it's coming from the actual store. Because that's scary, man. Like I can go back on so many instances where I know for sure that people have overdosed things, and I'm going to touch on that in a little bit. I'm going to go down the line on some things I encountered and see your thoughts on it. But it's dangerous. It's actually worse to get too much of it than to not get any at all.
That's true.
I mean, and that's what's scary because I mean it's been the Wild West out there. I remember particularly, I think I was 18 years old, and it was called Xenadrin.
Yep.
And I took a couple, and I mean, there had to have been way too much in there because my heart was coming out of my chest, and I thought I was gonna die. Like,
Mhm.
I remember going to my mom and dad panicking, like, shaking, and my heart was skipping beats and all over the place, and these things, they're not, and I wanna touch on that, the FDA regulated, and how do we know if we're getting what we're supposed to with supplements? Is anything FDA regulated? How does this work so we know what we're actually getting?
It is a regulated industry. I know it gets said often that it isn't. It is. The FDA, the FTC when it comes to like messaging in print on radio or voice ads, social media. FTC is part of that regulation, and then FDA would be over supplement products. The problem is the FDA is woefully undermanned,
Yeah.
and supplement companies are coming out by the hundreds every day.
Mhm.
And it's an industry that really can't be kept up with. So it has to be pretty egregious for the FDA to red flag it and step in. As you've mentioned, like there are situations with like ephedrine or DMAA or some of these ingredients through the years that have been an issue. Um, Certain brands, there's been owners that have gone to jail from the FDA, like USP Labs, speaking of DMAA. But it is rare. It
Mhm.
is rare that this kind of thing happens. The FDA typically will do more on the contract manufacturing level with audits
Mhm.
of the contract manufacturers. They'll inspect these facilities and make sure that these facilities are doing what's called GMP, good manufacturing practices.
Mhm.
So that's where we see the FDA. But by and large, it is regulated, but woefully underregulated, I will say.
Okay. That's what I thought, and there's so many people that run their mouth that say things that don't know what they're saying out there, and
Mhm.
it only gets worse, especially in bodybuilding industries. Uh, Things get passed along, and then people believe it.
Mhm.
And I've been seeing it since since I started doing this. It's been going on forever. Now, we you went way back in time. When do you think was this major shift towards supplement use? Creatine for me was always one of the first things I heard of in high
Yep.
school. That was like later 90s, 96, 97 was when it kind of became popular to me. Is that when you feel like there was more of a shift towards supplements? Was it prior? Because there was a lot of multivitamins were being pushed a lot.
Yep.
And I do want your thoughts on multivitamins
Mhm.
too, as opposed to taking singular things. But what was it? Was it creatine that you think was the biggest thing first? And this is not, we're not talking steroids or PEDs. I'm just talking regular legal supplements. Do you think that was the first one that really got it really smoking here? Or
It is like mid to late 90s when
Mhm.
we saw not only creatine, but ephedrine.
Yeah.
And ephedrine like shook the country,
Hmm.
like in a good and bad way. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, there was, as you mentioned, like Xenadrine, but also Metabolife and Hydroxycut and Ripped Fuel and Diet Fuel. And there was so many of these, and everyone was using ephedrine. Everyone was talking about ephedrine. Creatine was something that truly worked, and before then, a lot of products in sports nutrition were just hype and sawdust.
Hmm.
Uh, and that was the game changer, for sure. And then we started seeing the ready to drink products. There was American Bodybuilding that was at your gyms that had carb drinks, protein drinks, pre workout type drinks. And then there was the birth of the pre-workout around that time with NO Explode.
Yep.
And that was a game changer too.
Mhm.
Um, Pre-workouts became a staple for anyone working out and still is to this day.
Yeah.
Um, those were huge. And then we also had the Barry Bonds, Patrick Arnold, Mark McGuire scandals with PEDs, and a lot of these athletes were starting to delve into steroids or designer steroids, breaking records, becoming like kind of uber athletes, if you will, that were generation defining. And then that was the era of pro hormones. And we saw a lot of these pro hormones that on some levels were rivaling the steroids that bodybuilders were using for decades.
Mhm.
You had ones like Superdrol and Ferroplex and methyl 1 testosterone that were, I mean, people were putting on, 10 plus pounds in a month of lean muscle from a quote unquote supplement.
Mhm.
And trust me, the FDA had to step in on that one as well with pro hormones. And then, of course, later on, there was SARMs, a kind of another era. But I think it was around that time. It was like mid 90s to maybe mid 2000s that we saw like a huge boom, in particular in sports nutrition.
All right, here we go. This is my wheelhouse, and so this is where I really want to go with you. Um, I started to get the fascination studying steroids because I was such a massive sports fan. And so in the era of andro and HGH and steroids and everything else under the sun, and all of these stories of them telling you, "Oh, I didn't know I was taking this," or "It was flax oil." And I quickly understood the nonsense behind all of this, but I also understood what they did and what they didn't do, and how crazy and wild the things that you hear in the media are, that just clueless on what they say about these things. And then it became shifted towards the pro hormones like you're talking about. And I want to get into all of this with the pro hormones to the SARMs, because that's kind of where I really got into everything and what I became known for on YouTube. So I want to hear your thoughts on all of this. So it was 2010, 11 was when the pro hormones really, really became popularized. And like you said, Superdrol was a big one. Epistane was very popular. Haladrol was very popular. Um, there were many, 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 and some were methylated, some non-methylated. And these, like you said, designer steroids, but often more toxic than just taking straight Anavar or Winstrol.
Of 100%.
I
Yep.
mean, Superdrol made me feel the worst of any steroid I ever used aside from Tren. I could tell you that was the worst experience of my life,
Mhm.
where I gained 20 some odd pounds in 3 to 4 weeks, but I felt horrible. And when I tell you I felt horrible, I mean, I hated the world. I mean, not wanting to get out of bed, my liver values through the roof. How how did these get to become legal? Like how were these ever legitimately overlooked with what they were doing? And when did they really first come out?
It started with EAS, who I said was like behind creatine, and they had phosphagen, which is their creatine phosphagen HP, which was creatine plus carbs. Phosphagain was creatine and protein. But they became huge, and eventually Abbott bought them out and then actually shut them down. But EAS was massive at one point. Really the ones leading the charge in sports nutrition, and everyone was following. The first one was a product called androstenedione,
Yep.
and that was the first thing, and it was a kind of like postcursor to DHEA,
Mild.
very mild, but they found that it occurred naturally in Scotch pine. And so they found like a naturally occurring source. And with that, you can have DHEA, the Dietary Supplements Health Education Act, which means if it is naturally occurring or a metabolite of something naturally occurring in the quote unquote food supply, it can be a dietary supplement potentially. So that led to a prohormone, which was this androstenedione is a precursor to testosterone, being on the market, and people were stacking it with DHEA and saw palmetto and whatever these things at the time, seeing very minor effects. But that led to basically other people coming in and saying, "Oh, well, we'll just release steroids," and it was completely overlooked and underregulated at the time. And it got so extreme to the point that you're talking about, where these methylated steroids that absolutely shouldn't have been on the market, that do not occur naturally in any plants
Mhm.
or anything in the food supply, were on the market and literally killing people in some cases, like what you're talking about with Superdrol and Ferroplex and
Oh,
these methylated steroids that people are stacking, getting all kinds of liver damage. And people were thinking that they are safe because they're supplements.
yeah.
And that clearly wasn't the case. And at least with steroids, we have, 30, 40, 50 years of data of bodybuilders using them, knowing how to use them safely, getting labs and, working with a doctor potentially and a coach. You had just kids going into GNC and Vitamin Shop just buying steroids
Yep.
and saying more is better, and not doing a proper post cycle therapy, or
Mhm.
knowing what their labs are, any of that kind of stuff. And certainly stacking it with things like ephedrine, and it became very dangerous for sure.
And I remember I was testing this out at the time, and I was writing some of the companies, and I was saying, "Well, what's your protocol and how do you come off of these?" You know how many people were saying, "Oh, just take our post-cycle supplement and or you just don't even need one." And you and I both know, taking these, you absolutely need a post-cycle therapy
Hmm.
or you're going to wreck your testosterone production. I don't know how many people that were teenagers or in their 20s that probably put themselves on TRT using these, not running a post-cycle and never doing blood work, thrashing their liver, thrashing their blood pressure, cholesterol, everything through the roof. I mean, that Havoc was one that was super popular. That was an
Hmm.
Epstein form, but running something like Superdrol and not taking proper protection and protocols, that's just like running Anadrol. I
Hmm.
mean, essentially.
Hmm.
And DMZ was another one. So here's what happens. 2011, 2012, I was working with several companies. They were producing pro hormones and they got me on YouTube and got me to do videos. And one of the things they wanted me to start discussing was SARMs and peptides. And I said, I don't know shit about any of these things. I've got to learn them and study them because the only way to get these is on the research market
Hmm.
underground. So I became known as the SARMs guy at the time because peptides were not popular. Bodybuilders, they were pretty useless. I mean, there was like 7, 8 to pick from.
Hmm.
GHRPs, melanotan. There really was next to nothing, and they weren't producing size or anything.
Hmm.
So SARMs obviously became of interest, as you know, with what they can do. And the first things I ran, because there was only a few at the time, was MK2866 and S4. And that was really it, MK677 when I learned about them. Then they started coming out with more.
Hmm.
Well, then what happened? Pro hormones get banned, and then 1 andro, 2 andro, those are still legal. They're looking for loopholes, but what happens? All these people get stuck with all of their pro hormone powders, and they find SARMs and start selling those and supplements. Now, one of the things that I found rather quickly was that people were putting their pro hormone powders in there and selling them as SARMs, and people were getting side effects they shouldn't get with SARMs. And then all of this stuff compounds, and all of these articles come out about how dangerous they are when in reality they weren't. They are, but not to the extent. What happened there? I mean, how did this shift so quickly? And do you remember who the first like companies were that started doing this?
Well, there was a lot of companies that were making a fair amount of money being like hardcore and underground by selling pro hormones as they were getting banned or pulled off the market, or the bigger companies remove themselves from the market either because of lawsuit, bad press, FDA pressure, etc. But the smaller companies, knew there was still money to be made. And with that vacuum filled in SARMs,
Mm-hmm.
the selective androgen receptor modulators, I will say that the SARMs, while potentially the idea was that they were safer than these pro hormones, but had the effects of steroids. The promise was the effects of steroids without the side effects.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is the HPTA, this hypothalamic pituitary axis, that you were still getting suppression because these doses were much higher than they were supposed to be,
That's
because
right.
that's where you were seeing the significant effects.
Mm-hmm.
So these like YK11 and RAD 140 and there's a slew of them.
Now S23 is like
Yeah.
taking a steroid.
Yeah.
It's just a suppressive.
Yeah, exactly. There's a number of them that are out there, and they are very potent in their effects, but they're potentially very potent in their side effects, and you still need to run post-cycle therapy and all these things, and they are orals, and in some cases are potentially still hard on the liver.
Yeah.
So I don't know that they're really at this point any safer than the pro hormone era.
I have come to the realization that I and part of this is the evolution of them, because when it started, they were lighter. And the more that they made, the YK11 has actually got methylation in it, for example. So it's very, very toxic to the liver. But then we started to see more blood panels where, oh, wow, MK2866 has really hurt the liver. And we see some estrogen activity. It's aggravating people with gynecomastia, which wasn't supposed to do. And then the S4 side effects with the vision. And then they came out with S23, and I started to see, wow, this was it was nicknamed, it was like a male contraceptive.
Mm-hmm.
That was the nickname of it. It's just completely shutting down testosterone. Well, you can recover from it quicker. Well, how do you know that? And it's just a marketing trick. I guess that I've seen that evolution go on, and it's scary. It's very scary, the uneducation that people have and what they're doing to themselves. And that's why, everybody's looking for an edge. Everybody's looking to build muscle. And that's where I'm transitioning. So we've got all of these. We've got your pro hormones. We got the SARMs. We know what they can do. We also know the damage they can do. For you, where has this gone for something that's natural and safe? Like, what are the options aside from creatine, which we know? And we'll go back to creatine on the other benefits, but what else is there that we could potentially build good strength and good muscle without shutting down our natural testosterone, without thrashing our endocrine system and having all of these side effects? What are the options?
Yeah, I have a handful that I would say are actually quite potent and effective. Are they going to be steroid-like? Probably not, but uh, radically safer for sure. Dileucine
Mm-hmm.
is an ingredient I've helped bring to market. It's a dipeptide of leucine. Leucine drives muscle protein synthesis, the key amino acid, the branch chain amino acid, the essential amino acid that drives the creation of more muscle. Very key in your body for this reason when you care about skeletal muscle hypertrophy or muscle growth.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly this applies to repair and recovery and athletes in general, not just bodybuilders or people looking to put on muscle, but those that need muscle repair and recovery. Dileucine is a dipeptide, and it's much faster than leucine and uses what's called this PEPT1 transporter in the gut to deliver it about 189% faster. And what we've seen is 60% more muscle protein synthesis over leucine and 159% more muscle protein synthesis than exercise alone. And this is really impressive because leucine is what we would call refractory, where it doesn't matter how much you deliver at some point, it just shuts off. That's
Mhm.
as much muscle protein synthesis as you can get.
Mhm.
We're seeing a dramatic difference in muscle protein synthesis, strength, and recovery with dileucine versus leucine or anything else. So this has been exciting. This is one that bodybuilder, natural or unnatural, would be excited about, like, because this outperforms EAAs, BCAAs, any like leucine based anything. So this is the most potent natural anabolic that we know of.
How's the safety profile?
Incredibly safe.
Mhm.
This occurs naturally when you hydrolyze or break down a protein. You get down to dipeptides.
Mhm.
Um, and it may seem counterintuitive that a dipeptide is, which is two amino acids together, is faster than a single amino acid, but that's the case where this special transporter in the gut takes up di and tripeptides because of signaling. Actually, we now understand that as peptide signaling, where this peptide is going ahead of all the free amino acids and telling them what to do and where to go.
Mhm.
So that's what's happening with dileucine. With that, there's two sides of the equation: muscle protein synthesis, muscle protein breakdown. So to prevent the breakdown of muscle, HMB is an ingredient that's been around for
Yeah.
decades, but is great, especially paired with dileucine. So HMB dileucine. And then with that, I love obviously creatine, as we've mentioned, that protects skeletal muscle mass, increases power, but we're also seeing it be protective to DNA, to traumatic brain injury, reduces fatigue, improves bone strength and bone mineral density, improves fertility and protects the ovaries and testes, improves eyesight. I could just keep going down the line of all the benefits we're seeing of creatine. I think everyone should be on that.
Yeah.
And it truly protects muscle as we age, which is that muscle loss as we age is called sarcopenia.
Mhm.
Everyone should be on creatine. Another strength enhancer that I like is betaine,
Okay.
also called trimethylglycine.
Yep.
That's a great one as well. So this is like kind of my ultimate stack. There are some of these peptides out there that are claiming to be peptides from like fava bean. There's a brand called Pepti Strong, I think,
Heard of that. Yeah.
and I don't know, that the data seems a little confusing to me, whether that works or not. Maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. I'm not really sure. I haven't truly seen compelling data to this point, but maybe that's helpful.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think taking additional BCAs or EAs are that helpful
Mhm.
unless you're on some kind of extreme caloric restriction.
Mhm.
If you're getting enough protein, if you're getting enough calories, I think those have little to no benefit. I think taking dileucine 2 or 3 times a day with HMB and creatine at each of those potential 2 or 3 doses is going to have far more impact. So that would be my ultimate stack.
So creatine, HMB, betaine, and dileucine.
Correct.
Okay. Sweet. And can you just stay on those? Do you need to cycle off of them?
I believe you can stay, like, it's safe to stay on them.
Mhm.
There is an idea maybe with pathways, receptor density, all these kinds of things. And maybe you cycle off things for, you're on them 12 weeks,
Yeah.
get off them for 2 to 4 weeks, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Sure.
Okay. So your body could acclimate to them, but not necessarily.
Yeah.
Okay. I always like to cycle things in like
Hmm.
12, 16 weeks on, take a couple weeks off and
Yeah.
reintroduce them. That's just how I've always operated, but I'm always curious. Creatine, I just stay on.
Hmm.
I do. Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about creatine. I want your thoughts on this because this is one of those things that drives me nuts. Loading phase. What's your thoughts on loading phase of creatine?
There is legitimacy into the idea of a loading phase in that you can have what you're trying to do is increase creatine phosphate levels in the muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And by taking creatine monohydrate or some form of creatine like that, you're going to increase endogenous in the body levels of creatine phosphate.
Right.
The higher you dose the creatine, the faster you get to saturation levels in the muscle. So with creatine loading, which is typically around 20 grams a day, we see saturation in the muscle at about 5 days. If you were to do 3 grams a day, we see it at about 28 to 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, somewhere in between, if you were dosing 10 grams a day, maybe it's, I don't know, 10
Couple
days,
weeks, yeah.
something like that. But that's where the logic is. Beyond that, there is some really compelling data now that the muscle has active transport of creatine into the muscle. The brain does not. We see a lot of effects of creatine on the brain, but it's a passive transport.
Mm-hmm.
What this means is that only very large doses of creatine are affecting the brain.
Got it.
And that's where we're seeing effects on traumatic brain injury, like literally 1 being prophylactic or neuroprotective, or 2 being therapeutic or healing to the brain when you already have a brain injury. But also, and by the way, ketones would actually be really good to combine with a traumatic brain injury with creatine. But also, we're seeing new studies talk about fatigue and resistance to fatigue and those being underslept. There was a study with the 20 to 30 grams where they only got like 5 hours of sleep, I believe, and they felt as good as and performed as good as those that had 8 hours of sleep. And so we're seeing creatine be remarkable, truly remarkable. You have to think about how big of a difference that is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would be being 3 hours underslept would probably be the equivalent of having like 4 alcoholic drinks in terms of your performance.
Oh, yeah.
Like it has a dramatic effect. And so having your brain perform at a well-slept level just because of one intervention, because of 20 plus grams of creatine, is quite profound.
Mm-hmm.
Where we're also seeing some interesting research, and the data is not complete here yet, is a precursor to creatine called GAA. And this is fairly new to the market. GAA may help push the creatine to the brain in a way that just taking creatine alone doesn't seem to work. We're seeing 1 or 2 grams of GAA with a few grams of creatine, say 3 grams of creatine, work as well as 20 grams of creatine.
Really?
So this is very interesting, especially because that's a very large dose of creatine, and 2, there may be some GI distress associated with, in particular, women, seem to have a harder time with larger doses of creatine.
Mm-hmm.
This could be a game changer there. So that's been very exciting, is this GAA along with creatine.
Are there any products that have this GAA in it or any solo products yet?
I am not sure. This data is pretty
It's
new.
new?
I
Okay.
think maybe at the time of this podcast dropping, maybe there'll be a few companies,
So
but
would
it's
you
very
say
new.
that there's like a good neurological benefit then to taking the GAA with creatine?
Oh, I just thought of my friend's company, actually, Unmatched, Chris Gethin,
Yeah.
who was the face of bodybuilding.com back in the day. I've loved him for years. He has a product called Cregatine,
I've taken it. I love
and
it.
it has creatine GAA in it.
Yeah.
And so that is a product that you can take.
It's my
I'm a
favorite.
huge fan
Favorite.
of all things Chris Gethin.
Yeah,
So,
he's my guy, man. That he sent me that when he first was coming out with it, and I always tell him, "Hey, man, I got to get some more of that. I'm out. I got to get some more. That's one of my favorite products. I love it." Okay, next.
One secret ingredient I did not mention, if you're into working out, and maybe it could enhance certainly muscle but like workout adaptation much faster.
Mhm.
So think of it as getting more reps, more steps out of every workout is an ingredient I've worked on that is an exercise mimetic. We've seen ingredients in that SARM market that you were mentioning in the past, that GW 501, 516,
516, yep.
or ACAR, or
SR
uh,
9009.
exactly.
Mhm.
These kinds of ingredients that mimic exercise, literally, quote unquote, exercise in a bottle. Now, we
Mhm.
can't say that with the FDA. You have to say with good diet and exercise and all that. Beta amino isobutyric acid, especially the L isomer, which is sold as mitoburn, enhances this exerkine. So as you're working out, your BCAA pool, which is about 50% of your muscle, breaks down to some degree.
Mhm.
This was the theory around taking BCAAs while you're working out. And in particular, valine is one of the 3 BCAAs. Valine will convert into an exerkine, meaning like a signal from exercise. It's also called a myokine because it's a signal from muscle breakdown.
Mhm.
And this signal says to the body, we're working out intensely. All the adaptations associated with intense working out, let's ramp those up. So BABA is literally associated with improved VO2 max, neuroplasticity, bone mineral density, muscle innervation and strength, increased skeletal muscle mass, all the things that you would associate with working out intensely are associated with BABA. And we've shown that oral BABA, the mitoburn, will increase your endogenous or in the body levels of BABA around a workout quite dramatically. So this is literally, like I said, like getting more reps or more steps out of every workout. So
Mhm.
that's pretty compelling as well. And we're also seeing decreased fat mass, improved like ketone utilization, glycogen utilization or storage, like all of these kinds of things that we associate with exercise.
We've talked about creatine a lot, but I wanna ask one more on your thoughts here because you and I have both seen the evolution of creatine and all of the different forms of it and the price of things that have gone up and down and the popularity now all of a sudden is out of this world, just all of a sudden the past couple years when it's been sitting there the whole time.
Mhm.
Two-part question. One, is good old monohydrate the best, or is HCl or any of these other forms right on par? What's your thoughts there? And two, when did it occur that it just all of a sudden everybody knows now all of the benefits, whereas before it was just for muscle and strength, and that's really all it was known for, and water retention. Because that's like essentially that's what was always talked about amongst everybody. It's gonna make me stronger, it's gonna make me bigger, and it's gonna hold water.
Yeah, by the way, I'm a fellow in the ISSN, the International Society of Sports Nutrition, and I have my fellowship there, and it's very prestigious, and I'm thankful. But we worked on really like a potent textbook around sports nutrition, and I got to be one of the authors around 2010. And at that time, I was writing of the neurological cognitive enhancing benefits of creatine.
Really?
At that time, there was only some preclinicals, which means animal data, maybe some in vitro data, and I took so much heat over that. You can't even imagine like how much of a beating I took just talking about the theoretical benefits well beyond muscle of creatine. I mentioned bone, fertility, eyesight, brain function, and potentially being a tool that we will tap into in the future around traumatic brain injury. I was saying that over 15 years ago, and I took so much heat from the academic community, and I honestly forgot all about that until right now. So this is a little bit of
I was gonna
vindication,
say,
just a little bit
how's
of
that?
vindication. It is incredible. As I said, everyone should be on it.
Yeah.
And it is not just strength and power and what we've come to think of as a bodybuilder or athlete's ingredient, like a sprinter's ingredient. It is for everyone. It is for grandma. It is for everyone
Mm-hmm.
because it is protecting muscle loss as we age, that sarcopenia. It is protecting your DNA. It is protecting against cancer, protecting your brain, protecting your eyesight. Like I said, fertility, all these bone. It's powerful, like for your full body and how well you're aging. I do believe everyone should be taking at least 3 grams a day of
I
creatine.
agree. 100%.
Period. The end. So there is over 1,000 published studies. Now, this is another place that I took a beating when I was working clinically. I tried to put all my patients in a nursing home on creatine because of muscle mass loss, as I'm
Yeah.
talking about with sarcopenia, as well as cachexia with those just not getting enough protein. We had pressure ulcers from those that were not being turned or moving enough and were laying in bed. Literally, the skin and muscle breaks down and can become necrotic and infected, and they can just die of just their muscle breaking down.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to put them all on creatine, and my rounding physician, the house physician, said, "There's no good studies on supplements." And I was like, "Buddy, there is 500 plus
Yeah.
studies at that time. Now there's over 1,000." And I was like, most of the medications you're putting them on have 1 or 2 studies, and quite often they've been manipulated with many rounds to show minor positive benefit, enough to push it through the FDA. And you're telling me that's better data than the 500 plus studies that we have on creatine? And this is safe, and I could literally prevent the decline of these people dramatically?
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the reasons I ended up getting out of my clinical practice and just going into supplements entirely. I was so frustrated at trying to make an impact on that level.
Yeah.
It felt like I was just constantly, working against intuition or knowledge or innovation. It's just so frustrating.
Yeah. It's like a barricade.
So I believe fully in creatine. I believe everyone should be taking creatine.
Mhm.
Everyone should be taking at least 3 grams, maybe up to 5 grams a day. Again, cognitive benefits, maybe up to 20 grams, maybe GAA at a couple of grams plus 3 grams of creatine could be the easier, the better way.
Mhm.
You do have to actually look at, and creatine has these other compounds in it. With GAA, you can raise levels of homocysteine.
Okay.
So this formula, creatine, that I know Chris Gethin has the B12 and folate in it
Mhm.
to actually offset that.
Yeah.
So that's really important to keep homocysteine levels in check. And they've actually shown with the data that homocysteine levels were lower with supplementation as a result. So, so that's ideal.
What about the forms of creatine? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So creatine monohydrate is easiest to say, and most everyone that's a fellow in the ISSN or people that I know would say creatine monohydrate. That's the gold standard. That's the one that everyone uses. It's the best price.
Mhm.
Be careful what you're buying. I've come out with a form called the purest creatine that's actually purer than the well-known German creatine. It's the purest one on the market.
Is
But
that Creapure? Is that what it is?
well, that is a brand that's well known,
Mhm.
but I have one that's called Purist
Mhm.
that actually exceeds that one. Those are both great creatines, though. But there is a lot of creatine monohydrate on the market that has an impurity called DCD in it. And we're bringing light to some of these toxins that are present in the creatine. So I would be careful and only buy the highest quality creatine that you can. As far as creatine HCl and creatine malate or creatine citrate or all these different forms that have been on the market. There's probably been 30 forms, like
Creatine,
creatine,
ethyl ester.
ethyl ester. Yeah,
The
there's
$1,000,000
creatine
creatine.
anhydrous.
Yeah.
There is a lot of creatines on the market. You're just overpaying, I
Yeah.
believe. It's really just creatine has good bioavailability, great conversion to creatine phosphate. So I don't think there's additional benefit into spending more money on your creatine. One thing I will say is creatine monohydrate does not have good solubility. So what I would do is actually take the teaspoon of creatine, throw it in your mouth, then kick it back with, some water, some juice, some milk, your protein shake, whatever, as a way to ensure that you're getting it all. I think that's the smartest way to do it. Otherwise, if you're just putting it in your shaker cup or, with your pre-workout or those kinds of things, it can end up being something that settles to the bottom of the cup and you may never drink it. So that would be the smartest thing to do.
What about the water retention myth that everybody is so fearful of, that always wants to bring up? And I think that it's gotten better over the years, because before that was like the biggest fear with it was the GI and then the water retention. So tell me, is
I
that
think
true?
a little bit. The higher the body fat, and
Yeah.
so women tend to carry more body fat potentially than men, um, just for maintaining fertility and all the things. Men, like maybe like an ideal might be somewhere like 12 to 20% body fat. For women, it's going to be like 18 to 26%
Yeah.
or something like that. They're a little bit higher in body fat. The more body fat you have, there is a little bit more water retention that's visible. This is
Sure.
very small. Like it might be um you know 2-3 pounds if you're fully saturated. Some of the other weight that you're maintaining is actually intramuscular.
Yep.
There may be a little bit of water weight retention.
Yeah.
What we've found through the years is that dividing your doses seems to resolve that dramatically.
Okay.
So if if you're taking, you want to take 10 grams a day, just take 3 grams 3 times a day.
Yeah.
Or if you want to take 5 grams, take 1.5 grams 3 times a day, or, something like that. And we tend to see that resolve.
Resolves it. Okay. All right. So my shift, I would say, well, really, when I met Dr. Dave Rabin, I went from being so focused on fitness and strength and nutrition and muscle, which is all important, obviously, but that's only one piece of the puzzle, really, because for me, what I've gathered over time is, and I always talk about this now, is a mind and body connection, and you have to have them both. Now, I start from I like take it like a top and then I branch it down. So I start with spirituality and go then to neurological and like nutrition training. I know some people don't want to hear that. I don't care. That's my belief. We'll just focus today on the neurological and then the physical side of things. How important do you feel it is to have those both dialed in? Do you think people are so focused on the physical side with the supplements, especially that we're taking, that they kind of bypass the importance and the understanding that if you're misaligned up here, you're never going to be aligned over here, and vice versa? But I think the amount of understanding that needs to be said on being good neurologically and having a balance between your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, understanding that there's traumas there that linger, and how much of a drastic effect that has on all of our blood panels, the stress, the anxiety. I don't care how good we train and how we eat and how much creatine and supplement we take. If this is off, I mean, what's your thoughts? Because what I'm finding is you're just never going to be aligned.
Absolutely. One, I had read a study not too long ago that one use of any type of psychedelic in any environment, in any dose, one use or more was associated with a 1/3 reduction in all cause mortality.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I believe that is because of trauma and stress and these things that are stored in the body, that are stored in your operating system,
Mhm.
stored in your belief system, your ego, of how you play out uh, the routines that you're going through day to day. It's only in these kind of highly neuroplastic environments that we can rewrite that code, that we can go into the operating system like Neo and change those lines of code and say that no longer serves me anymore. Otherwise, the ego's very good at justifying your trauma, creating identity around that trauma where you believe that is who you are.
Mhm.
And that's where powerful dissociatives like ketamine, for example, that can actually pull you apart from your identity, where you can actually see yourself as a spirit, if you will, or a soul, if you will, or something like that, apart from this created identity. Like you're not your name, you're not your job, you're not all these things. Those are identities.
Yeah.
And these are routines that we've created on who we are while we've been experiencing ourselves on this planet.
Mhm.
When you see yourself apart from that, then you can say, whoa, I'm safe. I am someone outside of that identity.
Yeah.
And then once you see that, once you tease that out, then you can again rewrite that code and potentially delete that code and say that line of code that doesn't work
I
for me
got a
anymore.
lot of deleting I need to do,
Yeah.
brother, like a lot.
So, yeah, most people do.
Yeah.
And so, that's why we do see, alcohol use and other things like that, just because people are overwhelmed, overstressed, and maybe it's not alcohol, but it's Xanax. Maybe it's not alcohol or Xanax, but it's kratom or whatever it is. Like people are always trying to figure out a way to kind of escape their thoughts and these routines that are playing out, especially for those of us. I had pretty severe depression, like ruminating thoughts. Like
Mhm.
I would tend to like dwell on things for weeks and weeks and just stay in circles. And
Mhm.
um, those are definitely counterproductive to your health and well-being. And so 100% we're seeing as you mentioned, that mind muscle connection or the gut brain axis, or we're hearing about the brain in all kinds of ways. And certainly athletes are trying to tap into nootropics and,
Yeah.
cognitive enhancement and all these kinds of things now because yes, like paraxanthine, for example, which we can talk about, where athletes are talking about things slowing down and, being in a flow state and being tapped in, and how much easier life, athletics, performance can be when you're in these flow states. And you mentioned sympathetic, parasympathetic, which is your autonomic nervous system. This is kind of that yin and yang, if you will, that balance that we need, where yes, we need to be in sympathetic some of the time, which is fight, flight, or freeze,
Yeah.
where we're stimulated, and think of like dopamine more on that side of things where it's like the get stuff done neurotransmitter.
Mhm.
Um, but then you have like, more on the other side, the parasympathetic, which is more like GABA and some of these neurotransmitters where you're more relaxed, which is, um, like rest and digest, for example, like where you're recovering. And then I believe flow state is this combination of the two
Yeah.
where you're stimulated, but things are coming easily.
Mhm.
Like this one composer talked about the phantom hand, whereas like he was like looking at his hand, observing his hand, like not even knowing what it was doing because it was just reacting in real time to the orchestration.
Yeah.
Or like a Michael Jordan or Tiger Woods again, where things get quiet, things slow down, things become easier. It's like
Mhm.
you're again going back to Neo when he's just kind of like smiling and he's like moving his body around the bullets and it's like no problem. And it's like he's kind of like flicking the bullets out of the air and he's like, oh, this is like nothing. He's in like kind of the ultimate flow state.
Yeah.
And so that would be how I would discuss that. But certainly, we're seeing nootropics in general go through the roof.
Mhm.
There's a lot of similar to SARMs and prohormones, as we discussed, and we can get into peptides and
Mhm.
certainly get into paraxanthine. But there's a lot of nootropic sites that are selling research compounds
The
that
race
are not
cams, yeah.
well researched. Some of them are, some
Mhm.
of them are not. Some of them are very new compounds that are experimental compounds
Mhm.
that may have some acute benefits, but we're not sure of what the long-term benefits are. We don't know what the polypharmacy effects are, where they're being combined. Like, no one studied this crazy research compound and this crazy research compound and this crazy research compound all stacked.
Mhm.
Like, that's obviously very understudied, and so we don't know what the net effect of some of these things are that people are just stacking.
Yeah. There's a lot of people taking a lot of different things, and it's risky. I used to be that way, and I won't touch things now without years and years of data because I get that fear. I unfortunately and fortunately am like that type 1 where I never shut off. So when I'm good, I'm great. But when I'm stressed and anxiety filled, I am like rock bottom because I can't get out of my own way. In fact, on the drive here, I was doing like a morning prayer and I was just asking for help to just like stop letting anxieties and stresses dominate my bad days. Because when, like I said, when I'm on, like when you're like my type, you're on. But
Mhm.
when you're bad, it's bad.
Mhm.
And I used to use marijuana to calm, but then it got to the point where it was causing me more stress because it was like over years and years I became to be panicky
Mhm.
with it and it was like counterproductive. And I'm trying now to use prayer to calm and like actually took a step back and do like gaming because I never do it and I want to at night. And that's actually provided me relief. Even last night when I was worried about, oh, am I going to be late tomorrow to this? And I've got such a stacked day. And I sat there and played for an hour, dude, and I passed out and I was happy as could be. But I think finding something that can do that for you to put you in that state is important. That's kind of like the Apollo here. We both were that helps me stimulate my vagus nerve. But I want to talk to you and I'm going to pull these out now because I look for, as you do, companies that are smaller, newer, innovative, and you know where I'm going because these are our friends here that we both. But these are Tonum's products, and I want to talk to you about them because I found them in November at Eudaimonia, and they said, "Oh, we know Shawn," and
Mhm.
Shawn, and I said, "Okay, well, legitimacy, I'm sold because if Shawn's backing it, I'm going to be introduced to it and have interest in it." Now, these two, Neuro and Modus, I want to talk to you about because you brought up paraxanthine, and I know paraxanthine is one of the bigger ingredients in the neuro product. I'm more drawn to the neuro for the personal side and the modus for the client side because I'm not really focused on weight loss right now, but I know, and you know, how many people struggle with weight loss and GLP-1 use, which I
Mhm.
want to get into with you too when we get to the peptides. But I want to start with the neuro side and this product in particular because the alpha GPC is the one that interests me and the paraxanthine. There's great 7 ingredients in here, but I want to talk to you specifically about those two, especially since you brought up the paraxanthine. Tell me about that, how it helps for focus. What is it
So,
first?
so paraxanthine is one of the three metabolites of caffeine. When
Mm,
you consume caffeine, your body breaks it down into, demethylates it into one of three compounds: theophylline, theobromine, and paraxanthine. Paraxanthine, we used to talk about as the metabolite of caffeine, but said better, caffeine is the dirty precursor to paraxanthine.
okay.
Paraxanthine is the active that we really want. Caffeine and in particular theophylline are responsible for a lot of the side effects we don't want.
Mhm.
So getting rid of caffeine and or at least minimizing it as much as you can. I mean, we've shown with data that uh, anything after noon with caffeine, any level, has been shown to impair sleep. So this is where switching to paraxanthine, you'll see increased neuroplasticity, meaning like youthfulness of the brain and kind of regeneration and protection of neurons, the brain cells. You'll see increased nitric oxide to the brain, blood flow. You'll see increased glutathione and catalase, the master antioxidant, and decreased oxidative stress as a result. Uh, Decreased beta amyloid plaque, which is associated with Alzheimer's.
Mhm.
Increased acetylcholine, dopamine, serotonin. What are all the ways we know that the brain ages? Increased oxidation,
Mhm.
decreased glutathione, decreased nitric oxide, increased beta amyloid plaque. All of these things, decreased dopamine, those are all neurodegeneration and aging of the brain. Literally, paraxanthine is reversing the aging. And so not only is it acutely nootropic, meaning we've shown in many studies in the one use, like we showed with athletes in a 10K race where they took a multitasking test before and after the race, that they performed better after they raced, after they were exhausted because of paraxanthine. They had 11% decreased mental errors, whereas the caffeine group had 23% increase in mental errors. So
Really?
literally, paraxanthine is the flow and caffeine is the frazzle. And this is where they're just radically different. They're not the same at all. And so we're seeing both that acute nootropic as well as that neuroprotective effect. And we actually see the reinforcement of this idea of being neuroprotective and enhancing the brain in an e-gaming study we did, where we saw the e-gaming athletes over the course of 6 weeks and playing for 2 hours per session, that not only was there an acute time effect where with each gaming session, we saw that they improved in resistance to fatigue, like literally where at 2 hours they were basically playing at the same level they were at hour zero. Whereas with nothing, when they took nothing, they had a steep drop off,
Mhm.
at hour one, at hour two. And literally at 6 weeks, we saw basically they stayed the same across 2 hours. And so there was a time effect acutely, meaning with each session, but there was a time effect across the 6 weeks too, where they seem to be getting better and better and better with continued
Wow.
use. With caffeine, we see a negative time effect where you get worse and worse and worse with continued use. So this is just a night and day difference in how paraxanthine works. We've been obviously very excited about it. And, I've talked to you about Update, which is one brand that I've been involved with. And
Let's try this
there's a
sucker.
celebrity that's probably one of the top five most well known human beings on the planet that is coming on board with Update.
Mm,
And,
it's good.
and it's launching into the rebrand is launching into Walmart and a lot of other places. There's also another drink called Life Cider X that has apple cider vinegar and paraxanthine that's quite delicious as well. So paraxanthine is certainly having its moment right now. There's also, if you like pouches, there's these oral pouches similar to like the idea of these tobacco or nicotine pouches like Zyn. There's one called Ultra that has paraxanthine in it. But alpha GPC is another nootropic that you mentioned, in particular, our studied version called Genius Pure.
Yeah, yeah.
And we showed
Genius
that
Pure.
with the 330 milligram dose, that we doubled focus,
Mhm.
literally 2x the focus. So that is a huge deal. That number is a staggering number to improve productivity and focus to that degree from just one nutrient. And certainly when you have alpha GPC and paraxanthine together, that is the most potent thing I know of that you can add for focus and flow.
So the paraxanthine, because I saw your face when we brought that up, so I
Hmm.
know it's a big deal to you.
Hmm.
Let's just make this very simple because you covered all of the good science part of it. Essentially, it's the good part of caffeine.
Yeah.
Okay. And you can take that later in the day without losing sleep or getting jittery or any of that. It's not gonna have that kind of effect on you, right?
It typically lasts about 3 hours,
Uh-huh.
maybe 3.5 hours, 4 hours, absolute max. People that are working out in the evening get great sleep. We've actually shown improved HRVs, whereas with caffeine, as I mentioned, like even at 2 p.m., it worsens your sleep at 10 or 11. So, let alone working out on a pre-workout in the evening with 400 milligrams of caffeine and all this
Mhm.
other stuff, like it will jack you up. So, absolutely, much cleaner, better sleep. You don't have the bio individuality we have with caffeine. There's fast and slow metabolizers, where the fast metabolizers can have like an hour and a half life. The slow metabolizers, which is 60% of the population, the majority of us, can have up to 10.5 hour half life, where it's literally taking days to get that caffeine out of your system.
Man, I wish I could make my coffee and just pull paraxanthine and no caffeine in it then. Shit, so I gotta stop at
I
3
do
o'clock.
decaf coffee, use the Swiss water method, not some chemical method.
Uh-huh.
Get a Swiss water, mold free, decaf. I believe Life Boost,
Yeah.
Purity.
Yeah,
There's some good
yeah.
coffees out there that you could find, but those would be the ideal way to do it, and just take paraxanthine in capsule, gummy, oral pouch, drink, whatever.
Okay, so 'cause I think that this product is the best one that I've seen for neuro products, and I haven't seen millions of them, but I swear by this one. Couple of the other ingredients in here that I know that I like that I'm curious on the alpha lipoic acid, and then this berberine is a berberine phospholipid. So, what are your thoughts on those? Because I mean, taurine, very well aware of the milk thistle. This is a better form of milk thistle in here too,
Hmm.
from what I understand.
Yep.
And then the niacin is nicotinamide. I want to get into that too, but alpha lipoic acid. Tell me about that one a little bit.
It is an antioxidant that is one of the most powerful antioxidants, but it's also associated with regulation of blood sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in there along with some of these other compounds that help to regulate blood glucose, keep insulin and blood glucose low, which keeps growth hormone, GLP-1, et
Mm-hmm.
cetera, higher. So that's the thought process. Tonum has done some very powerful research at Duke
Yeah.
comparing the Modus product to GLP-1s. And what they saw is very similar results. Uh, but the dramatic difference was actually in maintaining muscle mass, and most of the weight loss was coming from fat mass. Whereas with the GLP-1s, they were seeing most of the weight loss be bone and muscle, which is definitely
Yes.
not ideal. Actually, a
No.
very small percentage was actually from fat.
Mm-hmm. It's dangerous. I don't think people realize when they're doing this what goes along with the GLP-1 use and why alternative methods are much better. But you know how it is. Everybody wants stuff right now, and they
Mhm.
want it now and they want it fast. And oftentimes they don't care how they get it or what the side effects are gonna be. That was always my problem with bodybuilders. They never thought about tomorrow. It was like, we wanna run these cycles, we wanna get big, and we don't care what's gonna happen down the road. That's why when I was looking at this and when I was getting the explanation on the weight loss side of it and how it was preserving muscle, with the GLP-1s, one of the things that I've sat in on that most people have the biggest problem with is how do we eat on this? We can't even eat because, I mean, all you're really doing is shutting your brain off from being hungry, right?
Well, and gastric motility, and
Yeah.
like you're talking about, it can, for some people, it can be pretty severe constipation and
Mhm.
heartburn, and just food essentially is not moving through the gut, especially at higher doses.
Well, and then the weight gain when you stop taking it. You know
Hmm.
what's happening. You're gaining all the weight back and sometimes more than what you
Sometimes
lost.
more, yeah, which is really bad. There's signaling, there's processes where your body feels like it's been starving, and then oddly, they don't recommend that you would titrate down off a
I
GLP-1.
know. That's because
They
they
just
want you to take it forever.
people just stop,
Yeah.
when they're taking like the highest doses, and then they just stop, and then they have horrible side effects,
Mhm.
which is obviously not ideal. And so having a product like Modus, that is natural, that's easy to take, that doesn't have the habituation adaptation, side effects. And by the way, that berberine is a phytosome and it's very bioavailable, but they're switching to my version of berberine called dihydroberberine,
Mhm.
which is exciting. But honestly, in this form, obviously, it's performing head to head pretty well with GLP-1s, and again, a lot better in some ways in terms of protecting muscle and bone, and almost all the weight loss being from fat. But that's going to dihydroberberine is even more exciting. That's the metabolite of berberine. We don't see any GI distress. We
Mhm.
see 5 to 20 times the bioavailability. We see it last twice as long in the plasma than regular berberine. So it's just going to take Modus up another couple of notches,
I love
and
it.
and we also see with berberine and dihydroberberine that they're a positive hormetic stress on the mitochondria. So by working on this AMPK pathway, it's enhancing the number of and the activity of the mitochondria through
Yeah.
stress.
Yeah.
And so that can be powerfully anti-aging for anyone. This
Mhm.
is like one of the ways that metformin works. And metformin was a great diabetic drug, but we also saw people that were 8% body fat that have been anti-aging using metformin. And so
Yeah.
it's the same idea that we keep insulin low, we keep blood glucose low, we keep ketones higher, growth hormone, IGF-1, growth factors, autophagy. All these things are much higher when we suppress insulin and blood glucose, along with inflammation being lower.
Mhm.
And that's what we see like on berberine and dihydroberberine. We see improved lipids, triglycerides, inflammation as well to go with that lower blood glucose and
So
insulin.
there's the mitochondrial health. There's as when you talk about triglycerides and everything like lower cholesterol, that's heart health. I mean
Mhm.
cardiovascular health. So there's multitudes of benefits here that we're looking at. That's why when I saw this and I was like reading over the literature and the makeup and the compounds, I just kept going, holy shit! Like this was done well. I mean, very well because this. I see a lot of the same types of products out there that kind of pair it off each other and they'll do one ingredient different or a little bit higher dose here or there. And there's just not a lot of differentiation and definitely not a lot of money spent on proper studies. The nicotinamide, niacin is nicotinamide. What does that mean?
It's a no flush form of niacin.
Yeah.
Nicotinic acid would be the full flush version of niacin.
Yeah.
Niacinamide or nicotinamide is an amide bound niacin that is going to one be vitamin B5 and uh, enhance your deficiency in potentially nicotinic acid, but it also leads to B3, increase NAD levels
Uh-huh.
as well. So this is where we're getting more energy, and that was the reason they're including it is to increase energy production because around weight loss can be like cellular fatigue.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So you have the berberine enhancing mitochondrial biogenesis, increasing the number of mitochondria, but you also have that pretty potent dose of niacinamide, nicotinamide, to increase NAD production, which is cellular energy.
And that what was wild was as they were making the neuro product and then found the weight loss benefits through some of the
Well, what I
compounds.
love about them is I've been in the industry a long time, 25 years probably, and I see so many companies, I mean, that have been around 20 plus years that won't spend $50,000 on a
I
study.
know.
They spent millions,
I know. That's why.
millions. And do you know where they studied at? Not just some random place, Duke University.
Yeah. That's where I was you could if you've been around long enough, like
Hmm.
you do,
Mhm.
I don't know anywhere to the near the extent that you do, but I do know a great deal, and I know what people do and the shortcuts they take and the money they spend and where it goes. And most of it's on tricky marketing.
Yeah.
It's certainly not on this. And that's why I said, okay, count me in. I just gave him my flagship 2026, like, this is my company of the year. I just put it out yesterday online. That's like where I'm at with it. And I'm super excited. I'm glad that I met them, but like I said, when I heard your name involved, that's when I continued the conversation. Was like, okay, all right, let's roll. Let's do this. So, okay, you know what? I want to ask you about something I wasn't planning on, but because we just touched on it with this, you talked about NAD. Now,
Mhm.
I've been talking about NAD a good bit here recently because there seems there's not an understanding with the NAD supplements on what works and what doesn't. Uh, a lot of people have the last, I would say, 2, maybe 3 years flooded themselves with NAD supplements, IVs. It's just one of those trends where everybody's kinda onto it and
Mhm.
pushing it. I'm more of, and I've talked to many experts of the precursors, the NMN, especially NR. The NAD supplementation itself, from what I understand, doesn't really penetrate the cell if you're taking straight NAD because
Yep.
it's too large. NMN is the easiest to get in there because NR actually converts to NMN and then it increases our NAD levels. So what you're thinking there is
Yeah.
that just a prevalent problem, and do more people need to be taking NMN, or what's the deal?
Yes. NAD IVs probably do little to nothing.
Right. Exactly.
NAD IVs probably do little to nothing.
Mhm.
They actually may cause more inflammation than actually do positive benefit.
Right.
There is very little of that NAD that will get in the cell
Mhm.
to that point because you have to get into the salvage pathway and all of this when we talk about NAD. So yes, I do believe NMN is better than NR, and a liposomal NMN, or maybe there is a new form called NMNH that could be potentially better. There's almost no data on it.
Mhm.
So
Maybe.
take caution on that. That's
Mhm.
a maybe. But like a liposomal NMN or some kind of protected form of NMN may be the best form. But also delivering it with uh, nicotinic acid, niacin would be ideal to have both of those delivered. And then lastly, add an NADase inhibitor, which is also called CD38, the enzyme that breaks down NAD.
Yep.
So this is where all the polyphenols are actually very exciting. So
Mhm.
things like apigenin, fisetin,
Yeah.
quercetin, EGCG, resveratrol, pterostilbene, these things like that. And it seems like fisetin may be the most potent
Mhm.
at doing this. So that would be kind of an ultimate stack. And then adding some other ingredients, like ones that I brought to the market, like ergothioneine, which is a potent mitochondrial antioxidant and mitochondrial enhancer, and maybe like a CoQ10 in particular, ubiquinol, and then a PQQ. Now you've got the ultimate mitochondrial formulas: a liposomal NMN, fisetin, um, the PQQ, the CoQ10, and ergothioneine in high dose, like 50 plus milligrams.
Mhm. I have spoken good deal with the Wonderfield Dr. Andrew Salzman I interviewed, and he kind of educated me on the NAD NMN side of things, and that's where I learned about CD38 too, because I didn't know anything about any of that at
Mhm.
all. And they have their younger product that addresses CD38 because you brought up resveratrol. I'm off the top of my head, I know that's in there, but I think people don't understand how much we actually lose as we get older, and that CD38 is a prevalent issue and has to be addressed. You can't just take anything without addressing that is NAD related, right?
Yeah, it's a double whammy where we produce less NAD as we age, and
Mhm.
then we break NAD down faster as we age. So
Right.
that's the double whammy. So it certainly makes sense to try and enhance NAD levels
Yeah.
directly and then inhibit the breakdown of NAD. And just stress, alcohol, poor sleep, bad lighting, junk lighting.
Mhm.
You can go down the line of all the reasons why we are making less NAD and breaking it down faster.
Mhm. Let's discuss peptides. Now, I told you I started researching them. It was 2011. There was literally, I believe it was GHRP 2 and 6, CJC 1295,
Hmm.
sermorelin, hexarelin, and melanotan 2. And that was about it that you could buy. There was really nothing else that was really being sold on underground markets. I'm probably leaving out a couple, but that was about it. And I've watched it evolve now into thousands and gone insane. And now more obviously everybody's into it. Everybody wants to learn about it. I'm curious, what are some of your favorites
Mm.
that you lean towards? I'm going to give you a couple of mine.
Okay.
KPV is one of my favorites.
Okay.
Mott C is one of my
Yeah.
favorites, and I'm sure you can understand why on both of those. I tend, of course, everybody and their mom wants to talk about BPC 157 and GLP ones. Now, BPC, rightfully so, obviously, um, for multitudes of reasons I'll let you get into. But GHKCU is another one of my favorites because I'm a longevity skincare guy.
Yeah.
But those are some of my favorites. Ipamorelin is, and that's one I left out, is probably I don't know, I would say old reliable because it does a little bit of everything. I like that one as well. But for me, those are my favorites. I look more on the cellular side, more of the longevity side, more of the skin side, and then the healing and all of that. And then SS31
Yep.
because of the heart.
Hmm.
For you, what are some of your favorites and why? And how do you feel about their place now and moving forward?
I think they're absolutely profound in terms of their effects. I think there's no going back. What's frustrating right now is many of them are getting pulled off these sites. There was a 150-page document that went out from the FDA and Big Pharma to most of these companies that are selling research peptides, certainly around the GLP-1s,
Yeah.
which are medications. But there is a changing of the law that's happening where peptides initially weren't allowed to be patented because they're naturally occurring compounds in the body. Think of BPC in the gut, or even the old school ones like GH or insulin that are peptides that are naturally occurring. You can't patent them. Are they sold by big pharma? Yes, but maybe it's in a modified form. Maybe it's because of the brand and it's in a auto injector syringe or something like that. But that's changing
Really?
because these things are so potent. Big pharma has put pressure on the FDA to change this, and now they will be able to be patented, and they are taking them away from these research sites in particular. Um, so not only are the GLP-1s getting removed, uh, but you're also seeing potentially a lot of the other compounds may get removed and are going to be behind a prescription wall.
Are
So
there any that you know of that you would
almost all of them,
really?
yes, they're it's being hotly discussed right now. Certainly the most effective ones that you're mentioning are the ones that they care about. So going to the stacks that I would mention right now, BPC 157, as you mentioned, is just I can't even tell you. I'm probably in the hundreds now over the last 10 years of people that told me they were going to have surgery, but then didn't need surgery because of BPC.
I agree.
Tendon damage, ligament damage, bone damage, muscle damage.
I've seen disc damage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's wild like how quickly people are healing with BPC.
Mhm.
So clearly there's interest there.
Before you go,
Yeah.
BPC methods of delivery. So when we talk about those, because I've been using a cream, honestly, that I love,
Mhm.
and it's a BPC TB 500 cream. Discuss the capsules, like oral form versus injecting site injection.
Yeah, capsule I think is not systemic. I think largely it is peptides are smaller uh, proteins that are very prone to be broken down by um, the stomach and certainly the liver, and you're just for the most part, you need to inject these. Now, when we say injection, we're talking about subcutaneous injection, which is a tiny insulin needle, which is in your body fat, which
Easy.
feels like nothing.
Yeah.
So for those of you that are needle phobic, we're not talking about IM, which is intramuscular. We're not talking about which is a big gauge needle and much deeper and much more painful, like a testosterone shot or something like that. And we're not talking about certainly IV where we're going intravenous and you need to know how to put it in the, you know, the blood concerns or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, this is very easy to do. And yes, you have to add bacteriostatic water to hydrate the peptide powder that's in the little vial and draw it up and then inject it. But this oral capsule, I believe, is just working more at a local level on the stomach. So if there are gut issues, I do believe oral BPC 157 can be very helpful. KPV could be helpful. TB 500 could be helpful in the TB for fragment, I
Yeah.
believe it is.
Yeah, TB4.
That can be orally active to some degree, and there may be some systemic benefits, but I believe most of it is working at the gut.
Mhm.
That if you
Exactly.
want the true systemic benefit, then you're going to need to inject. Now, as far as site specific, this gets argued a lot, but I will say anecdotally, everyone I've talked to, it seems to help to some degree. It's certainly not going to hurt.
Mhm.
If you're injecting in the area that there's been some kind of trauma, harm, damage that we want to repair, it does seem maybe there's a slightly better benefit to injecting in that area
Mhm.
versus just injecting into like, your stomach fat,
Yeah,
for example.
for sure. So what else? I cut you off there because I needed your answers there. What else are you looking at that you are really fond
Yeah,
of? Or
the ones you mentioned, like BPC 157, TB 500, KPV, and GHKCU, which is like the glow stack or the close stack, like those are all very healing peptides. And Ben Greenfield used to call it the Wolverine stack with the TB 500 and BPC. Those are very powerful. And then certainly the GH secretagogues, as you mentioned, like
that's
tesamorelin,
my favorite.
ipamorelin,
Yeah.
CJC, NODAC. Those are very helpful too. Um, growth hormone is going to be, and especially these ones because they're keeping up pulsatile growth hormone, which is actually better than like directly injecting growth hormone, which is not pulsatile. It's just a big bolus of growth hormone, whereas your pituitary releases growth hormone about 6 times a day. So you actually want this rhythm because all these hormones and peptides and neurotransmitters are all tied into like this undulating circadian rhythm of your body, and having things be more pulsatile is ideal. So behind growth hormone is growth hormone releasing hormone. And so like working on that level allows your body to produce more, but in a natural way.
Mhm.
So all that to say that that's a better way of doing growth hormone.
Tesamorelin is one of my favorites because of the ability to lose fat and maintain muscle and even build upon the muscle. And
Mhm.
it's like uh, a recomposition in a bottle type of thing. I look at it as if you're eating right,
Mhm.
with it.
Of all the GLP-1s, like semaglutide, which Mounjaro and Ozempic, and then tirzepatide, which is the second generation, retatrutide smokes everything.
Oh
It
yeah,
is
it's not even close.
insane.
It's not even close.
That one is incredible, but it's right now it's gone from almost all the sites.
Mhm.
Incredible compound. I have seen tremendous benefits from myself and other people I've worked with. Whether you're lean or overweight, you'll see benefits with Retta.
Mhm.
If you're already lean, then I would use kind of more microdosing level, and you'll see like that metabolic advantage.
Mhm.
Um, because it's working on 3 mechanism levels. It's working on, yes, GLP-1, but also working on GIP and then glucagon. And glucagon is kind of the new one. And it just keeps your blood sugar super stable
Mm-hmm.
all day long. It helps maintain muscle mass, whereas the other GLP-1s, as we talked about, can be terrible when it comes to muscle mass.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to improve inflammation, healing in general, give you that metabolic advantage similar to like when you were 18, 20 years old and the way you could eat. So at least on the microdosing level for longevity, we're seeing a lot of people love Retta. And then certainly if you're overweight, like maybe 4 to 6 milligrams. The 12 milligram in the study was way too much. The side effects increased dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think you really need to go above 4 milligrams a week.
Yeah, more is not always better.
Right. Next up, in terms of peptides, let me think here.
I forgot my other two.
Okay, tell me.
Solank and C-Max.
Okay, great. Yeah, let's go cognitive peptides.
Yeah.
So C-Max, especially the N-acetyl C-Max amidate, is actually the kind of the acetylated versions of C-Max and Solank are actually a little bit better in terms of bioavailability.
Mm-hmm.
These are nasal sprays, super easy.
Yep.
And C-Max is honestly as experiential as paraxanthine for me. Like, it is awesome.
It is.
I feel a huge cognitive lift. I feel much sharper. Solank is almost like kind of your anxiolytic. Like, it really reduces anxiety, like helps you feel like more at ease, relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be something like a theanine or a rhodiola or maybe like a magnolia bark or something like that herbally, like where you just feel like a kind of wave of relaxation and ease. And then of course some people love combining the two because that is flow state where you have cognitive enhancement and a relaxation. This is just like how all the studies that have shown caffeine paired with theanine are very powerful together because it smooths out the negative side effects of caffeine. I don't know that C-Max needs like smoothing out per se, but the flow state, as we mentioned, is kind of that relaxed versus stimulated. And really the two work so well together.
Yeah.
There are other peptides that are nootropic peptides like cerebrolysin and dihexa. I mean, there's a number of them that are probably forgetting Pineolon.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's some really good ones, but I would say the most experiential, like the best ones, are those two.
Yeah.
In particular, if you use that N-acetyl form, and
the synergy.
Yeah,
they seem key.
They seem to have great synergy.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking nasal sprays, one benefit that you can have is one, you should know how much the concentration is because you could just get a bottle from someone and it could be 1/10 of the concentration of someone else's. Two, it's good if you clean or rinse your nasal passages first because for the spray to adhere and then pass through the nasal membrane to the vascular tissue in the nose, it's ideal if you're getting rid of kind of excess mucus or what have you. So like doing like a saline rinse right before and then maybe giving it 10 minutes and then doing the nasal spray, you're actually going to maximize it more. And be careful if you have 10 or 15 nasal sprays from some peptide company. One, a lot of these peptides will not work intranasal. There are a lot of them being sold, but they're too big of peptides to actually cross intranasally. So Solank and C-Max do, but just be careful on trying to do too many peptides or too many sprays. Like melanotan actually does work.
Yeah.
Intranasally, I love that one, especially melanotan 2.
I can't do it.
You can't do
I
it?
had the worst experience with
Some
it
people
multiple times.
Some people have nausea with it, and
dude.
some people don't. But it seems bio individual. So if you do
Yeah.
have nausea with melanotan, melanotan 2 does have some like thermogenic benefits that are kind of like along with the tanning, you can like lose a little bit of fat.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you can use it, melanotan 2. If you can't, go melanotan. So
Oh, man.
anyway, but
Will
that's
you
yeah.
explain a little bit on how to use the nasal sprays for people that are wondering, like, because I've had that question for
Yeah.
years.
No, this is a great question because
Yeah.
this is true with like, intranasal ketamine. This is true with like some of these other research peptides that are coming out to the market that a compounding pharmacy is using, like PE 2228.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, I believe maybe there's even like a tesofensine and like some other things that are more like research drug level compounds that are being delivered intranasally. So one, clean the nasal passages. That's ideal. Two, don't stick the whole thing up your nose.
Mhm.
You're going to get like that post nasal drip. It's going to go behind your sinuses and then just drip into your throat, and you're
Mhm.
getting very little benefit from that. So literally, just barely have it at the opening of your nose, the tip of the cone, if you
Mhm.
will, and then make sure that you're pulling down in a pretty firm way so that you're getting a full spray.
Mhm.
If you kind of pull down slowly or not as firmly, like you won't get as a good a spray. So don't go too deep. Make sure you're pulling down firmly, and then don't breathe in. I think it's like a natural idea to like when you do it.
Mhm.
I think everyone does that. You're pulling it back again, like to your like you're getting that post nasal drip.
Mhm.
Just don't breathe for a second. Let it kind of coat the nasal passages and hit that vascular tissue, and that's ideal.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because I mean, it is different, and they can't explain how to do it on research sites because the minute they start doing that, it's over, right? As
Right.
soon as somebody sees it, they're shut down because of research. I think a lot of people don't understand that those research sites, they can't market it and they can't tell you what to do or how to do it. Then it's not research anymore,
Mm-hmm.
right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's why it says not for human consumption, and so many people don't understand.
Yeah, these sites aren't supposed to say anything about the ingredient, but then you'll see some of these sites saying all the benefits and
Then they get shut down.
yeah, and that's clearly no longer for research use only. That's what RUO means.
Yeah.
Research use only. If you see that term on these peptide sites, that's what that means.
Yeah.
Um, yes, and then also be weary of say so Motzi I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah.
Motzi, especially if you're using Retta, like that's the ultimate combination, that Retta TrueTide. Um, you'll keep your mitochondrial function up, you'll keep your cellular energy up. It actually works like via that AMP-K, like hormetic stress as well. Um, that is a really powerful one. And as you mentioned, SS31,
Mhm.
really powerful as well. Those are like, I think we've mentioned all the ones that I would definitely put towards the top of my list. There's some other ones that are interesting along the lines of NAD and anti-aging, 5-amino 1-MQ for
Yeah.
fat loss, but
Mm.
also increasing NMNT and NAD levels. Really compelling. That one is actually effective orally in the
Mhm.
right dose. And then there are some ones, if you dose high enough, the SLU
It's a
PP332
great one.
or BAM15, that are exercise mimetics, thermogenics,
Well, Sloop
uh,
was always told to be used at a really, really small dose,
super low
and it
dose, like
does nothing.
does nothing. They've been selling it at like orally at 50 micrograms, 500
Yeah.
micrograms.
Does
We're
nothing.
seeing that 50 milligrams or 100 milligrams, I wouldn't go above 100. There are some people playing with mega doses, but 100 is, I think, where I'd max out. But 50 milligrams, so you're talking about literally 1,000x difference in the dose here.
It's
So
insane.
no one was seeing benefit in the microgram levels.
Mm-mm.
So yes, so SLU PP332, very potent for fat loss and um,
I like what you said though.
exercise
That
thermogenesis, and
combo with
mhm.
BAM-15 is mean if as long as you're getting the right dose.
That's another one that I would say about 50 milligrams. So 50 milligrams for each.
Yeah,
That is
it's a
that is a
beast.
really awesome combination. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And a lot of these have multi benefits.
Hmm.
I mean, like MOTS-C, for example, multi beneficial. I was drawn to SS31 because I had a low ejection fraction issue, and I think that people don't know or don't understand like that can help with potential heart failure or lowering of it can raise your ejection fraction, make your heart pump more efficiently, stronger. I do question then moving forward since we're talking about heart and everything. So, what's your opinion on SGLT2 inhibitors like Jardiance? Do you have any opinion or thought on those? Because a lot of the people in my realm disagree on a lot, but they all agree on Jardiance. And I'm taking Jardiance for a specific need. And I've noticed though too, it's inhibited some of the things for me. I'm urinating frequently and I'm pissing out glucose. And
Hmm.
what it's done, I already had low potassium
Hmm.
from all of the training and not eating enough. And now I've noticed like when I start to have a funky heart palpitations, I just go slam potassium, it stops
Hmm.
because of, I'm going to transition into electrolyte importance, but I am curious as your thought on these medications.
It is a new frontier. This pathway that you're talking about is, well, some of the pathways, like with a metformin or insulin, are kind of capturing blood glucose after it's happened. SGL2 inhibitors are preventing the absorption of glucose in the first place and literally just, as you said, pushing it through urinary pathways.
Yeah.
Um, so for anti-aging, there's been some excitement around that because it does seem like while we all talk about like hypoglycemia and oh my blood sugar's crashing, it does seem like, especially when we look at ketogenic models, lifetime models in animals and things like that, the lower the blood sugar, the better.
Hmm.
We're just not seeing that like, oh, it needs to be in this kind of normoglycemic range. I mean, obviously you don't want it to be like below like 25, 30 or something like that. But
Right.
I'm saying that kind of like where the body can regulate and make its own blood glucose, irrespective of diet glucose, that the lower the blood glucose, the lower the insulin, the lower the inflammation, the higher the growth hormone, the higher the IGF-1, the higher the autophagy, uh, the reduced oxidation and oxidative stress, the higher the glutathione and catalase, et cetera. Like it just higher the ketones. All of this seems to be correlated that the lower the better.
Yeah.
So that's where a lot of people are using the SGLT2 inhibitors. Um, and it's compelling, but certainly I would agree. Like, what's the kind of longer term side effects? Like, we don't know. And
Hmm.
certainly there's always a price to pay when you're kind of messing with a pathway
Yeah.
chronically.
Hmm.
There's always downstream effects of other pathways. We know that the body's so great at homeostasis and what we like call like cascades, like the endocrine cascade. This hormone affects another hormone. Like they're
Right.
not working in isolation. Their body's working in this beautiful concert of hormones and peptides and neurotransmitters and all these signals that are happening. And it tends to be when you inhibit something chronically that something else is affected. And I think you're seeing that to some degree.
Hmm.
And so I guess if I was to use it, then I would certainly not add other things while I was using it and just
Yeah.
do a kind of self experiment, work with your doctor, work on keeping labs, um, and use the kind of minimum effective dose instead of max dosing things.
And see, that's what it's just one of those things where it was designed for one thing, and then I was prescribing it for the low ejection fraction. And I will tell you, I had that episode in June and I got the echo done and my ejection fraction was 44. And I had it tested again about 3.5 months after I started Jardiance, and I'm taking D-ribose powder and high
Mm,
ubiquinol with it, and I was up to 50.
mm,
I want to be in normal range, which is 55 to 70, but that was a pretty significant
yeah,
increase in a short amount of time. But, like I said, I get those funny heart palpitations, then I start to panic, and then
yeah,
I kept trying to piece this together, and I kept getting low potassium readings, which I was already getting anyway before the Jardiance. And so it's like, okay, I got to eat more because you piss out 500 to 600 calories a day
mhm,
automatically with the Jardiance, and then you're losing electrolytes. You're losing potassium with
uh-huh.
all the frequent urinating. And like I said, I have potassium
Well,
pills.
where glucose/glycogen goes,
Mhm.
like, you know this, anyone who's done keto, like, when you lose so much weight in, like, the first week,
Yeah.
a lot of that's that water weight.
Yeah.
Like, where glycogen/glucose goes, water follows.
Right.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, and that's why on keto as well, like, you need to keep your electrolytes up, in particular sodium, but as you're mentioning, sodium, potassium play a role together. They're the plus one, uh, ion, and there's the sodium potassium cellular gates, the voltage channels and all of that, where it's absolutely critical to have those levels up.
And most people on their diet eat way more sodium than they're supposed to and not nearly enough potassium than they're supposed to get. I've
Mhm.
encountered that time and time again, and a lot of HGH retention revolved around sodium potassium ratios. Because I mean, realistically, you should be getting close to like 4,500 milligrams of potassium a day. Some people will say 35,
Yeah,
3,600. Um, I think for somebody like me that sweats a lot, that trains a lot, and then also on these medications, need to be closer to that 4,700. And then it's finding the right foods for that, which is not the easiest thing always to get. I do a lot of avocados that have a lot in it because I eat
mhm,
a lot of
mhm.
avocado, like probably way more than the normal human. But like zucchini, a big zucchini, I have 1,000 milligrams of potassium. It's just finding the right foods and balancing.
Agreed. And sodium, honestly, I believe should be a much higher level than, you know, 2000 milligrams
Yeah,
or,
that's not enough. That's not enough.
especially if, like what you're saying, like you're shedding a lot of fluid and glucose and
Mhm,
electrolytes that, I would probably be looking to get a similar level of sodium. I said sodium is plus one, but it's plus two and potassium is plus one.
mhm.
But make sure you're getting something like, yeah, 4 or 5 grams of
Yeah.
sodium. If you're an athlete and losing a lot of electrolytes, if you're certainly a diabetic, if you're, someone who's doing a lot of sweating, maybe doing sauna work, it's very important to replace fluid, but also electrolytes.
Yeah, those 90-minute cardio sessions, I come out pretty drenched, brother. Like,
Hmm.
and I do them every day.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's probably overtraining, but I've toned it down. Um, but in Arizona, even inside, even in the winter, you're sweating a lot, man, and
Well, it's important. One of the things that I love from an exercise phys graduate class I had at Chapel Hill, my teacher told me, maybe don't think of it as overtraining, but under recovering. And I think that's
that's a good point.
a potent thought shift or thought experiment right there, is to think about how you're nourishing your body to recover from that difficult training.
It's so true. I underate for so many years, like just
Hmm.
eating disorder and struggling with how I look and everything. And I'm talking burning 4 and 5,000 calories a day and eating like 15 to 1,800.
Hmm.
Even now I eat 3,000 and on paper I'm still under eating, but I don't know how to eat any more than that without, it's hard, but you're right. One of the things that even as a teacher of this for years that a lot of times we're hypocrites, or at least me, was the lack of recovery, rest, taking days off, sleeping better. I have really had to force myself and now come to the realization because it's hard as you get older to accept I can't do this like I used to, but I can do it smarter and I can actually be better by resting and doing these things. How important is the rest part of the training in your view?
The rest, I mean, massive, like massive. Uh, I think foundational. You know, you were talking about Molly Eastman, who's a friend of ours. Sleep is a skill. I believe it's the most foundational part of biohacking
Mhm.
is to get enough sleep. And there is data to show that 7 hours or less, which is probably what most people think is normal or a great night's sleep for many people,
Mhm.
you start to see a dramatic increase, like a 3x increase in uh, heart attack risk and a 5x increase in diabetic risk
And why is that?
because you're increasing the stress on the neurons. One, the neurons become acutely insulin resistant. And when you're underslept, and this becomes what they call type 3 diabetes or essentially acute Alzheimer's.
Oh, okay.
And then you need it's setting the tone for your whole body and actually increasing inflammation because there's not enough cellular energy
Mhm.
and the brain uses a ton of energy. Um, and all kinds of things are happening. You're not getting the autophagy, mitophagy, kind of defragging of the brain that's supposed to happen at night. And so brain health suffers dramatically. And with that, a lot of the neurotransmitters and signals and hormones that are in that milieu are having downstream effects throughout the body, like where you're seeing increased oxidation, inflammation, glycation, lack of cellular energy. And when done chronically, when chronically underslept, that's when you're seeing just horrible net effect, like really just a terrible net effect. There's no like cortisol is going to be increased, epinephrine, norepinephrine, which is adrenaline, noradrenaline. All these things will be increased and you're just struggling to make it through your day and then you're
Mhm.
compensating with lots of caffeine or Adderall or whatever, and this is having an impact. And then add to it, I would say in for men in particular that are already overweight or maybe have used steroids and have like thicker necks, and you're seeing sleep apnea
Yeah.
being a huge thing. Just that snoring that you think is normal is not normal. You're going sometimes over a minute without breathing and you're having these apneic episodes where you're choking and gagging and you wake up and you think someone's been attacking you and it's nightmares, and or your spouse can't sleep next to you. Like all of this is you're not getting enough oxygen to the tissues,
Right.
and that leads directly to heart attack and stroke.
I
And
would argue lower testosterone from not sleeping enough, harder,
mhm,
more difficulty losing weight,
yep.
obviously inability to focus, probably shittier attitude. I can attest to that.
Yeah, a lack of resilience,
Yep.
like yeah, just a yeah, more agitation, frustration, anxiety,
Mhm.
absolutely lower testosterone, estrogen, all the things, whether male or female,
Yeah.
growth hormone, anything that's ideal is going to be impaired. You will not be optimized, period, the end, if you're not getting 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah, totally. So, give me your list of what you would say are just like absolute essentials that we need to take every day, vitamin wise or whatever. I'm sure there's a list, but in comparison to a multivitamin, what's your thoughts on taking a multivitamin versus supplementing each thing separately that we need?
I do think a multivitamin is ideal for most people there is a lot of pill fatigue. And I don't like kind of these all in one AG1 kind of powders that are like jack of all trades, master of none. But I do think that, you know, some of these super high end multis, like a Thorn, pure encapsulations, they make really good products. I will say that the testing, I've formulated some multis, you have to look at um, the each nutrient's interaction and their stability, meaning like what overages you put so that they stay stable across the life of the product, the 2 years of the product.
Okay.
Um, that takes so much work in a multi because you're not talking about a couple ingredients, you're talking about 50 ingredients or whatever it is.
Yeah. Mm,
And I've taken 3 years of spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in testing to try and figure all that out.
wow.
So it is very complex to work on a multi and do it well. So I would only trust like a really
Very few.
elite brand.
Yeah.
You do want to look for like the methylated B vitamins, organic forms of minerals, the right doses. I don't think you need like 10,000% of
Yeah.
anything. Like I think I would keep it in the sub
I
1,000%,
look at some of those and I always ask
range.
myself, what? Like, why?
Yeah, yeah. I think some of them are too high and don't need to be that high.
Let
Um,
me ask you this. Wouldn't that
yeah.
be like just not eating all day though? Can't you get some of those from food?
You can get some from food, but the argument is that what's different now is there's soil depletion, there's EMFs, there's all these toxins that are in the food supply, the air that are in our clothing, that
True.
endocrine disruption, 5G, whatever. There's all kinds of stuff that we're being assaulted with on a daily basis, and we're not getting the nutrients that we used to be getting. Here's a big one. Actually, this is one of the most exciting things that I've really stumbled into in terms of research and is right in line with this. And a good multi hopefully should have this. If not, buy this right away. Lithium orotate. Now, you might think lithium, like someone has, what would be called schizophrenia or multiple personality,
All I
all this
think of
kind of
is
stuff, all these.
Nirvana.
Right. No,
Lithium
that is
orotate?
literally 1000x the difference of what I'm talking about. Lithium at low levels, at again, 1000th the level of a medication, has been shown in a recent study. They looked at all the minerals and how they associate with brain health. And they were plotted along the line and they were all kind of going here, like along the line. And then way up in this kind of North Star, other side of the graph was lithium. It has a profound effect on cognitive health, preventing Alzheimer's, cognitive resilience. It is a game changer. And our soil is all but depleted of it. Our water supply is all but depleted of it. And maybe even some of the other things that are in our soil and water supply are actually preventing what small amounts are even left there from even getting absorbed. So if we look at lithium orotate, game changer. So 5 milligrams, a really potent, profound dose. Take it at night, take it consistently, and you'll see incredible benefits. I have one from Pure Encapsulations that has N-acetylcysteine with it, which I'm a huge fan of, that boosts glutathione levels at night.
I was just gonna
So
ask you
that
where
would
to get
be
it. I was looking, so
the one that I would suggest you add if it's not in a multi.
okay, perfect. What else then? I mean, we need magnesium, we need potassium, we need our electrolytes.
Magnesium, you're probably not getting enough of in a multi. It just needs to be bigger doses. I'm a
Mhm.
big fan of magnesium bisglycinate, magnesium glycinate, or magnesium 3 and 8. Those
Mhm.
are really the two best forms. They're both amino acid chelates, meaning the amino acid helps their bioavailability, glycine or threonine. The 3 and 8 tends to be better on a cognitive level, and the glycinate might be better on kind of a relaxing level. So maybe mag teen, mag 3 and 8 during the day, maybe mag glycinate at night, something
Okay.
like that. Um, Obviously, you're going to see, and there's a huge percentage of the population. I think it's up to 70% of the population is magnesium deficient.
Mhm.
And we see that it improves, obviously, bowel habits and constipation. We see it improves muscle contraction, cognitive function, improved blood sugar effects and regulation and insulin control, better, certainly bone health, um, stress and resilience. Like there's so many things that magnesium is helping with. It's more than 200 chemical reactions in the body. And that's where we see magnesium just be kind of the gold star of all supplements. Everyone wants magnesium, is seeing the benefits of magnesium. It works.
Mhm.
You feel it. You see a difference in your life. So that would be one I would certainly add.
I mean, severe problems if your electrolytes are off, obviously.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, heart rhythm's one big one.
Hydration and heart rhythm.
Hydration,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. For sure.
Mhm.
Magnesium. Yeah. So many places.
What about, D3 and K2? Would you put those up there as essentials
I
or
would.
Uh-huh.
And I do think this is another one that I may add separately from the multivitamin. The D3, we've seen in data that oil based is better than the dry. I've seen as much as like a 3 or 4x difference in terms of bioavailability,
Mhm.
where the soft gel, the oil based D3 is better. And in particular, if you have your oil based D3 with a fatty meal, then you see the best uptake. And yes, K2, not only for bone health, but as both have been shown to improve bone health with D3 and K2, but also D3 has a co-participant in K2 in a number of its reactions,
Mhm.
where delivering them both together has been shown to really have true synergy
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
And so there's the MK4, MK7 form.
Yeah. Yeah.
MK7 has more studies, lasts longer. MK4 may be actually more potent, but is very short acting. If I was to use just one or the other, it'd be MK7,
7, yeah.
K2. Ideally, you could get both together, and that's even better. But I don't know who's selling that way. But that would be cool if you could get MK4 and MK7 together.
I took one, I can't remember off the top of my head. It was a 4 and a 7 together, and I for the life of me, I don't know. I'll
Mhm.
figure it out and I'll let you know later, but I know I was taking one that way. I was turned on to K2 for the heart health
Yeah.
and everything with it. What about selenium, iodine, those? How essential are those to supplement?
Uh,
Like trace minerals.
yeah, I think they are important. You don't want to get too much of them, and they can end up becoming toxic or kind of interfering with the absorption of other minerals.
Mhm.
I do think this in particular, when we're talking about soil depletion and kind of over farmed soil and all of that, that you're seeing a lot less of, in particular, those trace minerals. And those are going to have the greatest effect when you reduce something that's already tiny and make that half as much or a tenth as much. That's going to have more of an impact.
Mhm.
So, honestly, there's probably not enough research on the trace minerals. Selenium, yes, there's some good data, like especially around vitamin E and how it works with vitamin E and heart health and um, antioxidant activity and things like that. But I do think that this is where a multi is good insurance,
Mhm.
in particular on the trace mineral aspect. So make sure that it does have some of those trace minerals. And iodine, as you mentioned, is really interesting because salt used to be iodized,
Yeah. Yeah.
like the typical Morton salt or iodized salt. But now everyone wants their, you know, Dead Sea salt or the, whatever, like this salt from here or there. And it's not iodized anymore. It's quote unquote more natural, which is cool. It may taste better and all that, but it doesn't have the iodine that the salt that was highly distributed before had. And so we are seeing like a greater increase in thyroid dysfunction and goiters and things along those lines. So again, just making sure you're getting some of these trace minerals is important.
Okay. Well, I just looked at the clock and I said 90 minutes and we went an hour longer. I got another probably 10 hours of questions I want to go over with you, so we're going to have to do several parts to this. I can't tell you how much I enjoy this. I mean, not just because we're boys, but this conversation is I can talk about this all day, and especially with you. I have had such a blast doing this, man, and I really appreciate you leaving a trip with your fiance early for me in Mexico, setting this all up for me here, having me down here, making the time for me. And just the daily interactions that I have with you or weekly, however they may occur. I value the shit out of it. I really do. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And I thank you for all of this, especially for your work.
Ah, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. It's an honor to be sitting here with you and to share my heart and my knowledge with you and your following. And any way I can help anyone listening, please DM me if you have a question. I answer all of my DMs. Follow me on Instagram and all the different things. Just at Shawn Wells, ShawnWells. Go to ShawnWells.com. Again, ShaWN. And I have everything about my formulations or various companies, but also like a lot of cool free downloadable guides, newsletters that are all free. Everything's, free. I have different lists of cool supplements that I think are good stacks or whatever, and where to buy them and all that good stuff. So should be anything you need on the site and should be all free as far as I know. The only thing I charge for out there is my book, and I have a course around the book, but that's it.
Well, I can say this without a shadow of a doubt. Most trusted name in supplements is an understatement. And it sounds like it's the highest level that you could get, but I think there's even more to it. And I already knew how much you knew, but sitting down here and talking with you and doing it face to face and going back and forth and everything, and the quickness and the efficiency of your answers without hesitation, the way that you just go boom, 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 without doing the politician answer to dance around the fact that you don't know. You never did that. In fact, you had an answer for an answer for an answer every single time. And that shows me not only the credibility, but the amount of dedication and just time that you've put into this that I can see. So I just want everybody, we'll see this video, but if you're only listening to audio, you can hear it, but when you see it, it's totally different. So, my friend, thank you for everything, for all of this. Like I said, it's been a pleasure and honor and everything in between.
Nah, thank you.
Yes. So, all right, everybody, that wraps up another one. I will have all of Shawn's info in the description. Thank you for watching. I am certain that this has been the best episode I've ever done. So, take as much as you can from this. That being said, stay tuned for plenty more to come. Dylan Gemelli and Shawn Wells signing off.